Hey, what's up, everyone, and welcome back to the channel. If it's your first time stopping by, I genuinely appreciate you for doing so. And if it's not, that means you've likely seen some pieces of the 4-hour live stream I did previously with Joe Holbert discussing the first 3 Scream films. If you decided to check out some more content after that, you are an absolute angel, and I appreciate you. Today's format is going to be completely different than that, and hopefully way shorter. The idea of this series is to, as the namesake gives away, kind of just give my first impressions on new releases as they come out and lightly discuss some of the things I like or possibly disliked about each movie that I just saw. Ideally, I'll be reviewing them or giving my first thoughts on them immediately after leaving the movie theater. However, in Riceman fashion, the rules are already broken. It's now been at least 24 hours since I've seen the movie, so some of the thoughts have already started to marinate a little bit, which I was kind of trying to avoid with this series. The plan down the road is to do a more in-depth series where I do deeper reviews of these type of movies or older films that I like and appreciate, and this series is not intended to be that. The main goal of this program specifically is to kind of give you a better idea if this is a movie that I personally think you should go out of your way to see in the movie theater, or wait till it comes out on demand, or possibly skip it altogether. So with that being said, let's talk The Monkey. Osgood Perkins returns with a film that is completely different tonally and thematically than Longlegs was.
Cuckoo, cuckoo.
This film is about 2 twin brothers who are passed down an heirloom from their father. However, this heirloom is not any ordinary heirloom, and it actually is responsible for killing multiple people. Thinking that they get it handled early on in their life, they try to move on as best they can, when unfortunately, roughly 25 years later, the killing spree starts again. The protagonist of this film is House Shepburn, played by Theo James, who Miss Riceman had to tell me was 4 and Divergent. So if that means something to you, there you go. Theo also plays his own twin brother in the movie, Bill Shepburn, which was a very interesting choice. Obviously, this movie is going to draw some comparisons to Longlegs, because obviously it's the same director. However, as you'll soon see when you watch the movie, it's a completely different type of movie. While Longlegs is a more intense, visceral, anxiety-inducing movie, The Monkey is simply not that. It's a way more humorous and simply gory film, which may catch people off guard. The trailer definitely hinted at this being a more outlandish type of film, but it still caught me off guard with just how far they went in that direction. Not to say that's a bad thing necessarily, though, because overall, I really did enjoy this movie. It's not a movie that really takes itself that serious, and it's an overall pretty enjoyable viewing experience.
Hello, brother.
Bill.
The monkey that likes killing our family. It's back.
So, with the question of, is this a movie that I think you should go out of your way to see in the movie theaters? Quite frankly, this type of movie definitely comes down to taste. This movie definitely plays violence and gore up for laughs, and if you're someone that can find humor in something like that, you are absolutely going to enjoy this movie. If you're looking for something more serious that you can really sink your teeth into and dive into the lore of the world building, this isn't that movie. But overall, for me personally, I had a good time watching this. So I absolutely would recommend to most people to at least check this movie out and see if it's something that will tickle your fancy. However, I do think it's going to be pretty divisive in the long run. Some of the writing in this movie is pretty strange, which I think worked way better in Longlegs. But trying to avoid comparisons for the most part altogether, hopefully that'll be my last one, at least for now. There's a certain choice made about halfway through this film that definitely changes the trajectory of the film. For some people, maybe better, for some, maybe worse. For me personally, it slightly dampened my enjoyment of the movie. The first half of this movie was on track to be something I thought was really special, and about halfway through that does change in some respect. It doesn't necessarily ruin the movie for me. However, it did change my outlook on it and my overall enjoyment of it moving forward. but that may not be the case for everyone. For example, when Miss Riceman came with me, she absolutely enjoyed the choice that was made, and she told me she thought this was a 5-star movie. And speaking of ratings, I doubt a lot of people are going to come here interested in what my personal ratings for a film actually are. If you are, you can check my letterbox for that, which, if I'm talented enough, I will pop up on screen. Maybe right here, maybe up there, or maybe it'll just be down in the description. It does feel like something I should at least attempt to do and see how it plays out. I'm giving a review, or at least my thoughts on the film. I should at least put a number behind it. So on this channel, I plan to rate stuff on a grain meter. It's the same thing as stars, rice, grains, you get it. So this movie, I'd give 3 grains out of 5, which is not necessarily a condemnation of the movie, because a 3 is a really solid film, and I actually like the movie a lot. So I do recommend checking this movie out if you're on the fence about it. It was pretty fun, light, and an overall enjoyable theater experience. But now I'm going to get a little more in depth about what I liked and possibly disliked about the movie in the spoiler section coming up now. So I do recommend, if you haven't seen the movie, pause the video now, go watch the movie, and then you can come back and see what I thought about it and see if you disagree or if you agree with what I have to say. Adam Scott plays the father of the 2 twin brothers, and he brings the monkey into a pawn shop. At this point, he's already covered in blood, letting us know some shit goes down around this monkey, and if you've seen a single trailer, you obviously know what that is. We get our first taste of what kills are going to look like in this movie. The monkey starts beating the drum, and the poor pawn shop owner is the unfortunate victim here. Unlike other horror movies where the inanimate object is possessed and comes to life and does the killing on their own, i.e. Chucky, the monkey takes a more Goldberg machine style. Goldberg? Rube Goldberg? Isn't that the judge? I'm going to just say Goldberg moving forward. That may not be right, but it's what I'm going to go with. The first kill is a harpoon launching through the pawn shop owner's midsection and then retracting back and pulling his intestines along with it. And it's pretty gruesome immediately. And like I said, it sets the tone for what this movie is going to be moving forward. And I think it was a pretty strong opening. So following the opening scene, we meet the 2 twin brothers, Bill and Hal. Hal is the protagonist moving forward, and Bill, respectively, is the antagonist, per se. You get your first taste of what their relationship is like when we see that Bill contributes to Hal being bullied at school and even takes part at home. This creates a true disdain between the 2 brothers, leading to Hal almost killing his twin brother by dropping a bowling ball over his head while he sleeps, which we do see what that looks like, but it's obviously kind of like a dream sequence, or just to show what Hal would have liked to do but chooses not to. Rummaging through some of their father's old belongings, they locate the monkey. Their babysitter picks them up and then takes them to a hibachi restaurant to eat, when we get our second taste of what the monkey's capable of. Having been left in the house, the boys are surprised when they come out to the van and the monkey's sitting in the back seat, strapped into the seatbelt. They disregard this as the anomaly that it is, and they go out to eat to the aforementioned hibachi restaurant. They leave the monkey inside the car, they go in and eat, and we get a nice little sequence here, which when we then cut back to the car, there's a hilarious shot of the monkey now in the driver's seat, with the camera being behind the steering wheel and the monkey looking like a child trying to see over it. The monkey then begins to play as it cuts back and forth between the hibachi chef preparing dinner, when he throws his knife in the air and it ends up slitting the throat of the babysitter in what they call a freak accident. The moment really starts to sink in, and then the head of the babysitter falls off onto the hibachi grill, which again is that same pairing I kind of alluded to of humor with violence and gore. And this movie definitely has a lot of that. We then cut to my favorite scene of the entire movie when it's the first funeral and we meet the preacher, who is a young lad who, I don't know if uninterested is the word or just unsure, but it's a hilarious sequence and kind of takes little jabs at religion and how formal these funeral proceedings usually are. I believe one line they reference life after death being a coin toss where you land on heads or tails. And this preacher lad says, well, not her head, that's a separate issue. And while not being the most highbrow humor you're going to find out there, it caused my entire theater to start belly laughing. Granted, there was only 8 of us, and this movie does execute on a lot of its attempts at humor. And overall, it's a pretty hilarious movie. The next death is the most traumatic of them all. Hal wants his brother to be the next one to go, which, if you watch the movie, you will understand why. So Hal tells the monkey that he wants Bill to be the one to go before turning the key. However, we soon realize that that's not how the monkey works. And unfortunately for the two brothers, their mother's the one who dies. Brutally, I might add. And for good reason, this fucks Bill up completely, which will come back later in the movie. The two boys are then paired with their Uncle Chip and their auntie. Might I add, Chip's death is my favorite one in the entire movie. We find out about Chip's death via conversation, and then we get a smash cut of his funeral portrait and the narration of how it happened, which is then paired with a comedic flashback of how it happens. Well, he was trampled by 67 horses while he was trapped in a body bag. And when they unzip the body bag, it's legitimately just ground chuck and beef. The auntie also has a pretty horrific death where she falls through the stairs, gets penetrated by multiple fish hooks into her face, then leans over a gas stove, catches her head on fire, and then runs outside and spikes herself on the for sale sign in the front yard. Pretty gruesome stuff. The two boys then vow to get rid of the monkey the best way they know how, which is chaining up the box and dropping it down the well. And the two basically, after this, kind of grow apart. And for 25 years, they essentially lose communication altogether. When we catch up with Hal, we see how he's emotionally affected by the childhood trauma he suffered, which we'll also later see how it affected Bill. But for Hal specifically, it's affected his relationship with his now ex-wife and his child, who he rarely sees. Excuse me. Fuck. Hal has one last weekend with his son before his son's going to be adopted by his stepdad, and he plans to make it a pretty nice and breezy weekend for the two of them. However, when they stop at a hotel, we see that the monkey's back with a vengeance. This is the pool scene where the lady is electrocuted / exploded as she dives into the pool. While Hal was witnessing this pretty gruesome death, his brother Bill was on the phone with him, reiterating that he also believes the monkey's back. This chain of events leads Hal to go back to his aunt's home, following an estate sale to see if he can locate the monkey. It's at this point that we get the shotgun realtor death. Fast forward a bit to not dive into too much of the minutia here. When trying to contact his brother on his own instead of waiting for his brother to call him, Hal finds a name in the phone book for Mrs. Monkey, who he then calls, hearing a voicemail box set up with Bill's voice clearly. It's about this point when the realization sets in that Bill is the one behind the monkey's return. And this is that choice I referenced earlier that didn't feel like a necessary one. I think the movie had legs to just stick with the idea rather than turning down an evil mastermind, evil villain type road. It just completely felt unnecessary. They were executing all the deaths perfectly, and the ideas that they presented, while not necessarily the most thought provoking, they were still very enjoyable. And while not the worst decision I've ever seen made in a movie, it still slightly took me out of it. This realization and eventual confession that, yes, Bill is responsible, leads to a showdown at Bill's fortress. It's here where I want to highlight just how strange some of the dialogue in this movie is. We find out that Bill became aware of the fact that Hal was trying to kill him as a kid and ended up turning the key, which killed their mother, which led Bill down a pretty dark path. After they threw the monkey down the well, Bill goes back down to try to retrieve it when he finds just the key, thinking now he has a connection to the monkey moving forward. He then confesses that all of the murders that's happened in the town have been from him turning the key. And the strange dialogue really turns up to a new degree here. The two brothers essentially reunite and find a mutual understanding when Hal simply says, "She was my mother too." Maybe I'm just missing it here, or I'm too fucking stupid to grasp what they're going for, but no shit. And it's treated with like reverence, and it's such a tense moment when they hit this realization that like I was just left baffled. Right when the two finally rekindle whatever relationship they have after confessing to all of these deaths, at one point Bill starts tussling with the monkey because he's mad that the monkey won't listen to his request to kill his brother. And this tussle between the two leads to the monkey going complete apeshit, pun intended, I guess, when we get a couple cute callbacks to some jokes previously made, i.e., when Hal's son is looking for things to do and he references going skydiving and he sees that they do weddings at the skydiving place. Well, that comes back up here. A bride that was clearly skydiving falls through the roof, and they peek outside the window, and there's like a knock at your cabin apocalyptic vibe going on outside. Immediately after the two kind of rekindle whatever relationship they have, it's put to a pretty immediate and impactful end when the aforementioned bowling ball that Hal originally wanted to kill his brother with then gets Goldberg machined into a cannon and straight into Bill's head, completely decapitating. Not even sure if that's the right word. His head completely exploded. Hal and his son then load the monkey up in the car, intending to drive away, when there's a cute callback to Death riding on a white horse, which has been mentioned several times in the movie previously. Now, Hal sees him in the flesh at a stoplight. He lets Death pass after the two exchange knowing nods to each other. And then the movie ends with a bus full of cheerleaders celebrating and then all being decapitated by a semi truck. And that's the monkey. Now, there are obvious themes that kind of get hammered over your head pretty often throughout the movie. One of the main ones being the term like life. This was printed on the box that they found the monkey in. And essentially, what it's saying and what the movie is saying is that the monkey is like life, or death, rather. You don't get to pick who, when, what, or why someone dies or lives. Unfortunately, that decision's up to life itself, and it's not something you can change or make requests for. And it's not necessarily a movie that you have to pay that much attention to pick up on. In fact, I think it's absolutely one of the type of movies that you can watch in a packed theater and have the best experience possible. Now, me personally, I'm not a fan of packed theaters. However, I do recognize this is the exact movie that's made for those type of situations. It's also a perfect get your buddies over and watch on a couch type movie because there's not that much to sink your teeth into, and you can miss a good amount of time of this movie and still understand what's going on. It doesn't take itself too serious in the slightest, and it has a pretty fun vibe overall to it. The most important factor in a movie like this is executing on the death scenes, and they knock them out of the park in this movie. All of the deaths are pretty creative in this movie, and they make use of their surrounding environment pretty well, and it's a pretty engaging movie overall because of it. This is absolutely not going to top any of your letterbox rankings. However, for me personally, it's a movie I'm going to consider getting on DVD or Blu-ray when it comes out just to add to the collection. In conclusion, I recommend this movie. However, I do caution you not to go in with extremely high expectations. So if you're on the fence, give it a shot. If you've seen A Million Ways to Die in the West and you thought to yourself, I feel like there's something here. This doesn't have to be a shitty movie. Well, this may be the movie for you. There's also aspects of Final Destination and how some of the kills are executed, which is right up my alley. So if that sounds like something you personally may be interested in, go to the movies, watch The Monkey. If you've made it all the way here to the end of the video, I genuinely appreciate you for sticking it out. This is my first attempt at this format. If you have any feedback on how I could improve, or things that you maybe disagreed with that I said, or things maybe you agreed with, please drop those in the comments below. If you enjoyed what you saw here, please drop a like. If you reckon you might want some more of the content that I'm going to be putting out, it would be an absolute blessing if you subscribed. Thank you to all you beautiful people for coming and hanging out with me. Thanks for stopping by, and I hope to see you next time. Peace.